For those with good taste.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boys from For Those with Good Taste. I'm Matt. He's Lenny.
Hola.
And we're here to bring you another wonderful edition of The Tale of the Tape. And this one's kind of special, Len, because this one we're doing UFC 263.
We are.
And I know that there is a fighter that is on this roster that's making his return, and it's got you buzzing about it, doesn't it?
Well, he's one of the biggest names in MMA. He's one of the last few true superstars that we've got.
The final frontier.
Yep. But before we get to 263, we're also going to spend a little bit of time on this past weekend, whether it be maybe a quick Jairzinho Rosenthal, Rosenstreich,
Josh Rosenthal. Nice job, buddy.
And then, or, the travesty that was.
Yeah, well, we've got a little
Paul
bit to
Mayweather.
cover before we get into UFC 263. And I think the big headline grabber was Floyd Mayweather's 8-round exhibition against YouTube sensation, a.k.a. social media entrepreneur, Logan Paul.
Yes, sir.
Some call it an exhibition. Floyd Mayweather called it an opportunity for him to have some fun. Would you agree with the fact that Floyd just kind of went in there and had some fun?
I don't know if he had fun. He looked kind of frustrated throughout it. Dude, I don't know where to start. I genuinely don't know where to start. First of all, I had said when this first fight was first announced that I thought Floyd had painted himself into a corner that for me, unless he knocked him out in the first or second round, I was going to be relatively disappointed. Yeah. And I thought it was a suspect decision to do that if you weren't going to be able to knock him out into one or two rounds.
Definitely.
In the back end here, watching the fight, I was like, all right, that size difference is pretty significant. Maybe it's not going to be 1 or 2 rounds, but it should be 4 or 5 rounds, right? Like, old Floyd, I think it would have been 4 or 5 rounds. And I guess to say this, first of all, the fight doesn't bother me that much.
Okay.
It's basically what I expect watching people like you or me who try to box for a couple of years and hop in there and box.
Get some training in.
You and me might be wrong because I do think that, dude, go 8 rounds. That cardio has got to be fan-fucking-tastic.
It certainly took something. I don't think anybody just gets off the couch and trains for 5 years and then is able to stay in there with Floyd Mayweather. Give Logan some credit where credit is due.
I actually wanted to kind of focus, and when I was initially thinking about us talking about this, I was like, I think we should focus a little bit on Logan first before we go.
Certainly.
Because I do think there's 2 different perspectives for how this fight went and how the fallout of this fight is, right?
Sure.
There's 2 different parties involved who have 2 very different fallouts from how this worked out. At least from my perspective.
No, and I think your perspective would kind of be the general consensus. Logan Paul came out of this kind of looking like a superstar.
I mean, he already went into it as a superstar, I do think.
Even more so.
And I would say for myself personally, I've actually been a fan of his for about a year now.
Okay.
Not that I listen to the podcast that he puts out like religiously or anything.
You're a fan of what he does.
But it is something that every now and again has popped up in my like YouTube streams and like, my YouTube sphere. And I'll watch like small clips here and there. And he seems to be a guy who has made mistakes but has a decent head on his shoulders. And I think he's relatable in the same way that I like Barstool stuff. So
yeah, definitely.
So it works for me. But he comes out of this looking far, far better, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Floyd probably should have had this go to cards, like instead of having it be no decision at the end of it.
Yeah.
Because now it leaves them to say that they won. And I do think he deserves a lot of respect for, one, just coming right at him in the first round, because if he was going to get it done, he was going to get it done then. Is it like a little shitty that the punches he threw were like
disgusting?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a decent analysis.
Like Wade did not look like you boxed at all for the past 3 years when you actually weren't that bad, right? From like when he actually was outside his jab, he popped Floyd with some jabs.
He popped him with some jabs, and the unfortunate part is there was no follow up. Right, like he didn't really seem like he had
1-1-2 that I think wobbled. It almost wobbled Floyd.
He didn't have the know-how nor the savvy to really know when to take his shots and follow up on them, and that comes with experience, right? You're in there with arguably the greatest boxer of all time. To me, when you talk about there being 2 perspectives to this, everybody from a boxing point of view is under the impression, just like you, that Floyd should have been able to do a lot more despite the size advantage.
I think he's older, man.
Yeah.
right? Like 44 is a real fucking thing.
Fighting a 25-year-old?
Yeah, 44, giving up 20 years in 40 pounds. And I think none of us took that into consideration because we thought that the skill separation would be so drastic. Yeah. Make no bones about it. Like Floyd won.
Yeah.
Right?
Like I don't think that's even contested.
Floyd dominated him from the first round on, I would say, for the most part. Like he did have Logan had some good moments for what it was. But I thought it became because of the rule set that Logan really was stalling for most of the last 4 rounds. Like the last 3, from round 3 on or so, it felt a lot like Logan was stalling.
Yeah, absolutely. And just trying to make it out.
But that's it. But all his job was at that point was to survive. So can I be mad at him for that? No, he should come out far more popular and he should get another opportunity. They're talking about MMA. For him, he's always kind of said, I'm more of a grappler. He's a good... I've seen him...
He's got the wrestling
Have you ever seen the videos of him and Paulo Costa?
Yes, dude.
The videos of him and Paulo Costa are pretty impressive to watch him go at him the way he does.
Dude, and Paulo Costa's a big guy.
Yeah, and a beast. Like, yeah, good grappler and everything. So, I think Logan might get a run at an MMA fight. If we're going to give CM Punk a run, I think Logan Paul's probably earned it in the same way that Jake Paul's probably going to earn it too. But this is far more impressive than anything Jake did to me.
And I think any MMA pundits would tell you that one of the greatest backgrounds that you can have to get into MMA is wrestling, because it allows you the opportunity to dictate, if you're good at it, where the fight's going to take place. And he's had some years to train in boxing, so who's to say he can't put some time into Muay Thai, kickboxing, something like that?
Yeah, and I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think he'd put a better showing than CM Punk ever did.
Certainly.
And I'd probably watch it, but that's I'd say enough. That's really the story for Logan Paul coming out of this. He won, like he's the victor. He survived 8 rounds with Floyd Mayweather when everybody said he had no shot. That's huge. My issues become with Floyd. First of all, the presentation that I was given. Right, he basically told me he didn't really train. But he didn't train for Conor. But it's like Conor 3 years ago is kind of a big difference. I still stand by the fact that Conor's a very similar size to Floyd. Like, it's not like they're like drastically different in the way that they walk around or weight. Conor's a little bit bigger than him.
But Conor's nowhere near 200 pounds.
No.
Where Logan is very clearly
a 200
pounds. Yeah,
like
absolutely.
he would fight at 185 or 205.
Yeah, he'd cut weight just to make the division like a weight division that he would need to fight at in MMA or UFC.
Yeah.
There's a drastic change in the height advantage is another thing that you look at and you're like, Floyd, you fought guys that big before. Like to me, it doesn't really constitute the difference.
So it is difficult though, Matt, because I do think that the height, it was a combination of things, the height, the size, and then Floyd not being as Floyd as he was. Because in my prediction of this fight and the way I envisioned it, I thought he was going to be able to get to the inside the pocket and be able to slip punches and land, because the punches that hurt the most, especially to the body,
counter punches,
are countering on some hooks and things like that. Yeah. But the thing is, Logan didn't give him any of that. No. The punches Logan was throwing after the first round basically were just straight jabs, which all Floyd really could do is pull counters, right? Was what he was kind of working on. But when you don't have the distance the way you want to, and you don't have the speed that you once had, I think that he just couldn't find those punches. He did land. And
there were some instances, and you were probably about to say it, but there were times where he showed some explosiveness, but you could see that it tired him out.
Dude, so I was watching it while like playing I had Call of Duty on, so I was like talking to people in my ear, right? And I was saying, like, I genuinely was in awe for the second and third round, just because the great thing was seeing a guy who's not trained for his whole life throwing punches, and then seeing the guy who actually throws punches for a living, the snap and everything on Floyd's punches were incredible.
And the timing, where he was to throw some of those punches, you're like, wow, like your positioning is incredible.
To your point, I think the height did make a difference in the sense that Floyd basically had to throw everything from a lunge.
Yep.
He either walked in, it was one of two things happened, and both hurt him in this fight. He either walked directly into pressure by having his hands up the way he did to Conor, but Conor wasn't going to just bear hug you every time. Nope. Conor was really trying to slip and box.
Yep.
Whereas it became a thing with Logan where it was like every time you're walking into me, he was just, you met, and then you're getting grabbed up on, and you saw Floyd employing a lot of the forearms.
I saw him throw an elbow.
Yeah,
certainly saw him throw an elbow.
Getting upset, right?
A lot of people think that in one of those instances, he actually woke Logan up from a punch.
Wilson knocked him out.
Yeah, so there's been some.
I think all that. I got into this last night that I think that the video of him, like he didn't. I don't think he knocked him out because I don't think the punch was any type of punch that would have knocked him out.
No,
because I saw him get hit by way harder punches.
Yeah.
Secondly, explain to me the benefit of Floyd not knocking him out. Like that's what I don't understand from people's
That's why
perspective.
it was so funny to me that people are saying that, but when you notice it, it's like him, like he's literally pushing him back, and that's why Logan makes the gesture of like he's fixing his head, so almost it's ridiculous. But man.
So it was either walk into pressure or Floyd lunged. He jumped into those hooks. He was throwing it was like a lead left hook, right? He kept throwing a lot, and it looked really nice. He would throw it
around Logan's guard.
Yeah, and it was hitting, but he's jumping into it, and then when you jump into that, you're again just clashing your momentum and you're giving meeting the guy what he wants.
A much bigger opponent, right? Yeah. Like this guy is very much heavier than Floyd. In a nutshell, man, though, you just gotta kind of the thing that really sticks out to me and it concerns me after a performance like this for Floyd is people are like, oh, how do you feel about your legacy? And Floyd says what I think a lot of people would expect him to say. He says, you can't feed your kids on legacy.
Yeah, I actually, Steve posted that, and I messaged Steve and said, you also can't feed your kids money. So,
granted, you can't feed your kids money, but you can.
Just, I mean, you're saying is like, if you're going to be so literal in like the saying of like, but your legacy is what made your money. So your legacy does feed your kids. You do like understand that, right?
He's not known for his wisdom, Lenny.
Like the fucking legacy you created pays the bills that you buy your kids food with. Like,
Mike, again, my concern there is not only that he literally doesn't understand what he's saying, but this just goes to show that this isn't going to be the last time we see this.
I think he's done. I think he's so a couple things. I started this off by saying my issues with one of my biggest issues is the production. So you go from him telling me he doesn't really train, then you give me a 4-minute or 5-minute trailer video, like hype video before the fight, right? Which is again preempted by like Mauro Ranallo and like Diaz and Mero or whatever, telling me how this
shit show of a commentary
how
team,
this
by
YouTube the way. Like how this YouTuber shouldn't be in here and how this is like a real big joke and like basically just all these people who actually spent $50 on your product, you just spent 10-15 minutes telling them how stupid they fucking are because this fight shouldn't happen. Yeah. So that really bothered me, right? It was kind of insulting.
But do you remember how it was for the Conor fight?
Same thing, right?
It was the exact same thing.
And people did it again, so shame on them, right? The other thing that bothered me is when we get into the fight, Diaz and Mero had a couple funny lines. The dope fiend lean, I think, was a pretty fucking funny line. But for the most part, my main issue is like it wasn't commentary. It wasn't unbiased.
You had actually said even before the fight started, you were like, the commentary is what loses me on a lot of those fights.
I had been impressed by them prior to that fight because I had been going. What I said to you was, we had watched these Triller events. Like most recently for boxing for me, aside from Canelo fighting, I've watched these Triller fights with Snoop Dogg making a bunch of jokes and shit and like had a moment and it was funny for a night. But then you had the most recent one with Oscar De La Hoya saying all this nonsense. And I was like, wow, these guys, because it's Showtime, I'm actually, even though this is kind of a farce, right? Yeah. I'm getting a real production around it. Yeah. I'm going to get some real commentary because I think if we had real commentary, how the fuck are you not saying how positive this is for Logan?
Yeah.
And basically because Jake's on the outside making the show that he's going to make out of it, you're more engaged with talking shit to him who can't fucking hear you than talking to me who's listening, is paid for your product and being like, hey, and a majority of the people who actually paid for this, Matt, I'd say a decent portion of them maybe are Logan Paul fans too.
Yeah.
And all you did was spend time.
You didn't play to that.
You didn't even try and pretend like you gave a fuck about them. Yep. But they're paying for you to be there, Diaz and Mero. So
it's a major. It didn't sit well, it's a black eye, man. And it's when I was like, man, this commentary is shit for me. And it got to the point where you and I think we both respect Mauro Ranallo.
I do. But he was bad, and I didn't like him
He
on that.
got worse because of the company that he's with.
He's trying to keep it up.
Trying to keep it up, trying to be cool. And Mauro has the WWE background, so he knows what it's like to play up a facade. This was a huge, huge knock on the commentary team from a production team. But what you have to understand, Len, is that this is the same production team and the same company that just signed Jake Paul to a legitimate boxing contract.
Yeah, well, because there's no money left. Because we're all like talking. We wanted to keep this a little short, but like the big conversation that's coming out of this right now is you have Paulo Costa pulling out of a fight because of pay.
Yep.
You have Francis Ngannou talking about like, wow, like these guys got paid more in one night than I'll make in my whole career.
In your lifetime.
Right. And he's in an exhibition boxing match. And that led to Dana White's response. Did you see his response on it to Paulo Costa?
It might not have been that response, but I saw the response that, yeah, we would make money doing stuff like this, but at what point would my company not be taken seriously anymore?
So that was like his initial point,
response,
a while ago, right? So like the one that he came out with this point, and it's tough because I fucking hate Dana at this point, but I tend to.
But are you agreeing
sometimes
with it?
you agree with what he says, where he's like, okay, Paulo, go and create a YouTube channel when you were 13 years old. Make that super successful, and then fight the greatest boxer of all time. And yeah, maybe
bring your audience,
and maybe you'll go and make $20 million. But you fucking didn't do that. He was just like, you didn't do that. You're a fighter. Fucking fight. Because he's like, you're the same guy who we just put in a main event slot against Izzy, and you've had nothing but excuses ever since.
As far as why you lost,
right? Like, so it's a tough fucking look to do that. And these are the guys that are fighting our battles. This is the issue with Ben Askren going and making $100,000, with Tyron Woodley going and taking these paychecks, is that, yeah, man, like, there's going to be people who got paid. But I would like to know, dude, like, how much did the Hurd
Jared
fight,
Hurd?
right?
Yeah.
How much did they get paid? Like did they get paid enough
Jared
to live off of it?
Jared Hurd got paid well.
Yeah.
But what is
The dude
it?
he fought
Louis Arias, who kicked his ass,
basically said like I almost had to quit because I
didn't
don't
make
get
any money.
paid. I don't
doesn't
get
make
paid.
money. Yeah.
So yeah, dude, these guys are paying. Like Tyron Woodley is cashing in on the fact that he won a champion. But Tyron probably I don't know that this is the biggest paycheck Tyron ever got. Didn't Tyron fight on a Conor card as a champion?
So I think this is Tyron basically saying, I'm going to make the most base money that I don't have to negotiate for.
Yeah.
Because we know that he had to fight tooth and nail to get the percentage points that he got to even make any money on a Conor card. So I can understand that. But him saying that this is going to be the biggest paycheck and the easiest money he's made, that's a total dig at Dana White. And it plays into exactly what you're talking about. Tyron Woodley was somebody who had other avenues of making money. That didn't play into him generating pay-per-view buys, right? Paulo Costa wants to make a $350,000 paycheck, but has no way to back any of it up.
Because, yeah, like you're just ignoring the fact that you don't actually draw attention to the sport.
No.
Like, people aren't kicking down the doors being like, I'm a Borrachinha fan. Like, you know.
Your most exciting fight is with a guy who's no longer in the UFC.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just put it that way.
And you know what? Yeah, the grass is always greener, and these other companies are paying people who go over there. But do you think if they're paying Corey Anderson $500,000 to fight, that there's going to be that well dries up?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Like if every time that they sign a mid tier, like a guy who's not the best UFC fighter, who's like that Ryan Bader tier, where they're very good, but they're not that, but they're paying them triple.
They're signing
what the UFC's
superstar
paying.
money for not superstar results, and it takes away from. We've said it before. They have a very shallow roster. Mm-hmm. You're not able to fill out a roster because you're paying these mid-level guys.
And the UFC always comes back to the defense of like, okay, like you only look at the top of our card. But you're not talking about the fact that we pay some of the most money to the guys on the prelims. And it's a lot of it's fucking facade, because I don't want to lose the message here. These guys should get paid more.
Yeah, we'll state it right here. We are not for fighters not getting paid.
I agreed when Jake Paul came out and was like, why am I paying your fighters more than you are?
Yep.
Why are they all begging to come fight me? That is a bad look for the UFC. I 100%
We both
feel
have
that
never
way.
been a defendant for Dana White. We've talked about how we've admired the fact that he's kept on keeping on during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. We've talked about how he can't miss when it comes to making the big moves and taking a risk. We absolutely love that. But when it comes to the fighter pay, we're always going to land on the side that fighters have nowhere near gotten paid what they should. Mm-hmm. I think that's fair for us to say, but I think what we're going to see now is we're going to see more controversy about pay, and we're going to open up this black hole for the UFC that's ultimately going to make it even worse for guys like John Jones, Francis Ngannou, Israel Adesanya, who maybe deserve or maybe feel like they deserve to get paid more. Chances are they're not going to.
Yeah, the issue is like, yeah, John Jones has a leg to stand on for what he should get paid. And like, that's the other shitty thing with some of these guys bringing up there. Like Ngannou, I think, has a reason. Ngannou's going to bring an entire country of fans. And
he's
it's
also a heavyweight.
Of fans, heavyweight. So that's going to draw big business. The new Mike Tyson, all that moniker shit, right? He's going to bring in a country, not only from a fan perspective, Matt, but think about how many athletes the UFC is going to reap the benefits of because of having Kamaru Usman, Stylebender, and Ngannou, right? Yep. Those three guys are going to launch such a like hotbed now of people wanting to get out of where they are now and seeing these people that are huge superstars and so likable. And I don't hear Stylebender really complaining about how much money he gets paid.
No, I would say we've talked about it. He's probably on that superstar list.
There's some like and guys like the Diaz brothers had to fight to get this, right? But it's just, I don't want to lose the message. They should pay a lot of these guys more, but looking at the grass is always greener is not always the case. And to close up the thing, Floyd Mayweather really fucked up his legacy in my mind. He really tarnished boxing in a way in my mind because it just takes away. One of the things we had mentioned is like, this is that idea of the guy from the couch coming and fighting the guy in the cage. Well, now it looks like anybody can fucking fight in a ring, right?
And what does that 50-0 really mean now?
But let's get on to UFC 263. If we could, Matt, I want to start from the bottom of the card.
We're going to start from the bottom so we can get here.
Yeah, to get up to the top, right? Yeah. So by bottom, we'll probably do some quick shout outs when we have a little time at the end, but we're going to start at the fights that we've kind of deemed as the ones that people are probably most curious about. It's not insulting
where to
anything
start
else,
your watch.
But we are casuals. Keep that in mind, right?
Bastards.
So we got Damien Maia, Belal Muhammad. This is another really big opportunity for Belal Muhammad coming off of a really disappointing fight against Leon Edwards. Really happy to see him making this kind of turnaround at this type of time against another person that can kind of give him a name to put on his record and continue climbing the top 10 if you were to beat him, but also a challenge that I think is unique enough that is going to answer some messages like what kind of grappling defensively do you have? And that's an important message to always be able to answer as you climb the ranks.
It's even more so important when you look at who's at the top of that ladder, right? You've got some pretty powerful grapplers, wrestlers, guys who can get you in the clinch. For him to take on Damien Maia and hopefully kind of get the rub, right? Damien Maia's been around a long time. I'm sure the goal
isn't this going to be one of his last fights?
Yeah, I believe this is supposed to be his last fight. And Belal coming off of that controversial eye poke, it's an opportunity for him to get back in there, get a win that's going to propel him back up this ladder. And he's fighting on the same card as the guy who poked him in the eye. So maybe, ipso facto, you're able to set up another fight down the line if you can come away with a big performance here.
Yeah, and I'm sure that would also be heavily implicated by the outcome of Edwards' fight. Yeah. But I think that's a destination that you should get to at some point if these guys keep winning or if they both time up a loss at the same time. Yeah. That I would definitely like to see that again. It was a good fight.
Yeah.
As far as looking at this one, I'm certainly pulling for Belal Muhammad. I'm a big fan of his. I've liked him since just prior to his move to the UFC. Of course, Damien Maia is he's one of the most likable guys ever. He's one of the best grapplers we've ever gotten in MMA, maybe the best.
Down, probably the best.
He's one of the few guys I can tell you that if I was talking to a true, I joke about us being casuals, but if I was to talk to a person who is genuinely a casual, and you get those people who are like, the grappling stuff's boring. Yeah. Those types of people.
Can you show me someone who makes this look interesting?
Dude, I would show them some of the grappling transitions that you got in Jake Shields versus Damien Maia.
Damien Maia versus Chael Sonnen.
Yeah, another
when he gets the triangle from the top.
Holy shit, dude. Yeah, some of his backpack submissions. Yep. Even for what it's worth, the Askren fight is fucking boring as shit for the stand-up portions. But when you get them on the grappling, it is pretty fucking exciting.
The one that's really interesting to watch, and if you want to talk about grappling not being as physical as the punching and knockout power, watch him choke out Rick Story.
Yeah, the nose projectile.
He cranks his neck so hard that blood starts projectiling out of his nose. Great scene. It's tough for me to pick against Damien Maia for that reason. You always feel like he's gonna have enough to stand the test. But I do think that this is the opportunity that Belal's been waiting on. We said this about the Leon Edwards fight. I think that this is the fight that finally puts him over.
I think that the consensus at the time of the Leon fight was that the Leon fight was probably a little bit more of a step up than he was ready for, and that he was going in there to learn some lessons but probably lose. This is actually better for him in the sense that he gets to come in here on a big card with a lot of attention.
Get the name value.
Against a name that I think most people, whether you're a casual or a hardcore, are going to kind of vaguely recognize, if not really recognize, because Damien Maia has fought for a title. He's been near the upper end of the welterweights for quite some time now. That this is the right opportunity for him to come out here, and I hope he gets the W. I'm predicting him for the win.
Yep. I'm right there with you.
It could be by stoppage on the feet or a decision. But
yeah, Damien has gotten better on the feet, but Belal Muhammad has shown that he's got the goods while he's standing up.
I have an eyelash that dropped into my water.
Make a wish. And I that's crazy.
Fucking got it, baby.
And you got it right here. But I think it's only fair that we move on to the fight that I know you've been waiting for. We've got Leon Edwards, who we have openly bashed on this podcast.
At times, you more than me. I'm actually pretty forgiving.
I think I called him a blockhead, Charlie Brown. But he's facing the legend. No, the badass.
Yeah.
No, the epic badass. And we're talking about Nate Diaz, who I know is one of your favorite fighters. Probably Nick is probably his favorite.
I think he's most people's favorite.
Sure, a lot of people love him.
He's fighters' favorite fighters.
He's a fighter's fighter.
Yeah.
Right? I think that makes sense. He has a style that the fans tend to gravitate to, and he is not shy of embracing the moments, i.e. his flipping off the camera for Conor McGregor, or his flexing while he has Clay Guida in a triangle.
It wasn't Clay Guida. It was you do this to me now.
Marcus Davis.
Not him either.
No,
he finishes him with the eye swelling. It's fine. We can keep going.
That was your chance to stand up.
Any other day the name's like right there, but
no worries. All right, so we're absolutely talking about UFC 263, Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz's first fight in how long, Len?
It's about a year and a half. Is it?
Since he,
it was Jorge, but.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
It was the BMF fight. But I believe that was about a year and a half ago now. It's a big return for him. And it's a return in fashion that only he would really do it.
Yeah, taking on a fighter who a lot of people weren't really lining up to fight. It was tough to get him a fight. And he's coming off of the controversial eye poke of Belal Muhammad.
I almost want to say Kurt Pellegrino was the person that I'm almost.
You're still holding on to that.
I might be right.
You might be. I'll look it up while you're talking about how great Nate Diaz is.
So yeah, just go to his wiki because we'll find it right on there. But the reason I say this is like really like this is the perfect fight for him to come back to. It's in the sense that it's a guy that I don't think a lot of people in his position would be clamoring to fight, and that's why he's going to take it. And I think probably you could look and say like maybe he's a little bit. Yep, I'm right. That he's a little bit. Yep.
Oh, yep, you got it. Nailed it.
He's in a situation where this guy is on a hot fucking streak, right? He's won about 8 or 9, he lost by disqualification in his last fight, but prior to that he had won about 8 in a row, and he's about as hot as they come. He's a guy that he's in a similar spot. Leon Edwards is to what Kamaru Usman kind of was, where he's put in a lot of really good work, but not a lot of big names want to give you that rub. And I had seen a quote from somebody recently that was like, when I'm done, I want to be known more for the amount of people I put on than just the stuff that I did myself.
Okay.
And this in MMA is a singular sport, right? You really only can look out for yourself, and you do have a team, but at the end of the day, your legacy is your own. I think it's really impressive to look and say to him, like, to look at what he kind of is doing with this type of matchup, and even what he did with Jorge Masvidal, is that he's lifting people and giving his shine. He's willing. This is where he comes out and says, like, I fought all the fucking toughest people, and people want to talk about he's a journeyman and stuff. This is kind of what he means, is that it's like, yeah, dude, I don't just fight the guys who are going to make me a ton of money. Yeah, I picked a fight with Conor, and I got the biggest opportunity in my life, and I made the most of it.
But I took that shit on short notice.
Yeah, and I made the most of it, man. I got the job fucking done. But once he got there, he has not run away from losses because he's lost a lot in his career, and I don't think he's afraid to lose.
No, he's not afraid to lose, and he's not afraid to... we talked about legacy earlier. Mm-hmm. He's not a guy who's worried about legacy in the sense that he wants to be somebody that's never been beaten. He wants to be the baddest motherfucker, and he'll fight anybody out there to make that a reality.
Exactly. And so picking a fight with Leon is just fucking perfect. And then being a person who exercises every single time he fights, he does something different to exercise why he is a superstar. Yeah. Last time out, he created a fucking championship from thin air, right?
Which really hasn't done anything since that fight, right?
Because if he had won, he would have been walking around with
like
Masvidal. It did something for Masvidal.
It did something for Masvidal, but now that Kamaru has it, it's not really.
He doesn't have.
That
wasn't on the line. That wasn't on the line. And Kamaru is a badass, but he's not there yet. I'm sorry.
He's not the BMF dude.
But so with Nate, it's like this time out. Yeah, I'm fighting on the undercard. It is what it is, but we're making it 5 rounds. I'm a 5-round fighter. We're going out there because dudes like him are you really know after 5 rounds who's gonna win. Now the difficult thing to move on to kind of the prediction I foresee with the fight is I don't know that this makes it 5.
No,
I don't love them. I think this is a really tough matchup. It's the type of thing where like maybe like Nate is durable and maybe he does get it done. But I think he bit off a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to handle the pressure that Leon can put on you,
the size, the strength. This is a true welterweight.
For 5 rounds, man. He's a big welterweight. Let's put it that way.
Nate is still not a true welterweight. No. And he was getting kind of bullied around a little bit by Jorge.
I mean, do we remember the Rory McDonald debacle when we talk about being a true 170? Or I know that was very early on.
He's definitely grown and filled up, but you're right. That's a fair comparison.
That's one of the things that I think is always going to be in his 170 pound legacy. It's just one of those things where he's not always the biggest guy. And fighting Leon Edwards, who is coming in here with another chip on his shoulder, something that he's going to have a point to prove. You don't want to be an example of his career. This is definitely
he's got to prove a point here. He's got, and I think him coming out and finishing him, that's the worst thing for Colby Covington. Yes. All right. So Colby Covington right now is sitting next in line for the throne to fight for the championship.
He's not sitting comfortably, though.
No, because if Leon Edwards goes out there and finishes a guy like Nate Diaz, not just beats him, but he goes out there and finishes him, which I could see him finishing with a head kick, maybe.
Oh, man.
Like Josh Thompson.
Doesn't happen often, but Josh
Thompson style a little
absolutely.
bit.
Where you're setting up the takedown so much that it makes him a little nervous.
If I remember correctly, Leon, I believe he does a pretty good job of leading with that hand coming first and then throwing the kick. He leads with a jab in front just to mask the fact that he's actually going to be coming up top for a head kick. Yeah, and I could see maybe that happening.
I've talked badly about Leon Edwards, but I don't think a lot of it has ever had to do with his skill set.
No, he just makes really fucking dumb comments.
Terrible choices, terrible comments, and really has put himself in a light where feels like he's a little bit more deserving than he's proved to actually earn. Who am I to say it? But I think this is a hell of a fight for him to stake his name. We're putting in a pick right now, Len. I think it's pretty obvious who you're taking.
It pains me. You know where my heart lies. But,
I know.
But part of doing this is being able to separate how you feel from what you think is going to happen, right? I'll be pulling for Nate. I am in the Diaz brother army myself, but I am picking Leon Edwards.
You're picking Leon Edwards. Wow. Yeah. Okay, I thought I was the one that was going to have the controversial pick here. Because while I do believe that Leon Edwards might win, I am picking Nate Diaz because I do think that when it comes to throwing a wrench in the works and fucking everything up, Nate Diaz has never missed an opportunity to do that. I think maybe he steps away with a win on this one.
Dude, I'll be the happiest person ever if you're
I'm taking that pick, man.
I've just been let down by this game far too many times, my man. I've been heartbroken too much.
The MMA gods have never really shined a light on us when it comes to picks. Maybe the only time they did was Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo.
So next up, we have a couple of rematches in our title matchups, Matt. One of them being considered for Fight of the Year last year, right?
With good reason.
It was a fantastic barn burner of a flyweight title fight, and then we're also going to be getting Stylebender in the main event. But let's start with the flyweight championship here. Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. I almost want to say the second because you have the two.
No, because I have two there. No, it's because it's par deux, Len.
Yes, sir.
We've got a theme here for our double main event header with the two title fights. Man, we talked a little bit about this fight where we didn't want to put picks in, but once we had heard that it was being announced, I know that you and I both looked at each other a little bit skeptical because we want this fight to live up to the first one, but very rarely do they.
I think this is a fight that I think it's gonna be high action.
Okay.
The style that both of these guys go at it, I think it's gonna be high intensity and a lot of action. I don't necessarily think that we get the same length.
Okay.
The news of Figueiredo last fight having to go to the hospital the night before and wasn't feeling very well. His weight cuts are typically kind of rough, and that was a COVID weight cut, right? Yep. It was during the beginning stages of that. Yeah. Of them bringing back events, I should say. Brandon Moreno had a lot of really great moments, but I think skill for skill, he did look to get kind of outclassed, especially when they were both fresh, right? I would have to lean towards Figueiredo here, learning from that initial 25 minutes and having the power to get it done. But I think the first couple rounds of this fight should be a lot going on because both these guys will get after it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be short of action in this fight. But you made a great point about Figueiredo kind of being compromised going into this fight. And we didn't know that going into the fight.
I always take that shit with a grain of salt because people want to make excuses
sure, but,
all the time.
I mean, take what you will. That video looked pretty, it looked pretty substantial. And whether or not he did have, a sickness going into it, you got to think that championship caliber kind of comes into play. Mm-hmm. And I do think that Figueiredo is going to have a little bit more skill set to be able to get it done this way.
So
this time,
your prediction?
Yeah, I'm taking Deiveson Figueiredo. I think you're on the same boat there.
I am with it. I think I am going. It's tough because Moreno is definitely very durable, the same way that Nate Diaz is very durable.
We know that he's game,
but I'm gonna say Figueiredo. He seems. I think he's just on a different level right now from a physicality standpoint, and I'm going to roll with him. But I would be really impressed. Moreno just seems like a really likable guy. If he could get it done, that's cool. But Figueiredo is who I'm taking. Probably by finish. Yeah. I think by finish.
I'll lean on that with you, but certainly should be a hell of a fight, right? I think it certainly sets the tempo for us. For what should be, I don't want to use the word interesting, but I will say it's been well anticipated. The main event rematch between Israel the last Stylebender, Adesanya, versus Marvin Vettori.
Yes, sir. Who got a Dolce & Gabbana sponsorship, I think, for this fight.
Really?
Yeah. I think I read that. Like a major Italian brand got behind him.
Good for him, man. Hopefully Pirelli Tires will hook him up with a Lamborghini if he can pull off the win. But if we were to go back to their first fight, Len, what do you remember about it?
Truthfully, my memory is shit. I know it was very close, but it did seem that, Izzy, there's the famous Matrix kick clip. I do certainly remember that. And he just, on paper, I think from a fluidity standpoint and a striking standpoint, Israel's definitely going to stand out and be the flashier, better fighter. But as we've seen, especially recently with Marvin Vettori, he won the grappling exchanges in their first fight, if I remember correctly. He did really well in there. And then we've seen since in his most recent fight that he was able to really come out and grapple Kevin Holland in his most recent fight,
absolutely.
Which apparently
kind of laid the blueprint for being able to beat Kevin Holland by the looks of it. The reason why I asked you what did you remember is because while I couldn't remember a lot, I do remember that fight ended up in a split decision.
Yeah, it was very controversial.
Right, it's very controversial.
Marvin Vettori's basically built his whole resume nowadays on being the guy that basically beat Israel.
Yeah, essentially being the last guy to really, obviously besides Jan, to really give him a run for his money. So it does kind of seem interesting that was Israel's second fight in the UFC. He's obviously developed and become UFC champion. Do you think that Israel's got a point to prove in this fight?
I think he's a guy who has a chip on his shoulder no matter what. So I don't think specifically, I mean, I'm sure what you're referencing is he's coming in off of a loss, the first loss of his professional career against a guy who they clearly don't get along. They talk a ton of shit to each other and has been claiming victory over him for years now, right? So I think he's always naturally got a chip on his shoulder, but he might have a little bit more the same way he went into Paulo Costa with a little bit of that chip. I think the question on the other side here, though, is coming off of that first loss. Did Jan Blachowicz, the same way that we're talking about Marvin Vettori was successful in their fight and what led to that split decision, did Jan Blachowicz show that there is a way to beat it? And do you think that Marvin Vettori has the skill set to get that done?
That's the difference right there, wouldn't it? Because
I mean, this man is a very good grappler.
He's a very good grappler. You would hope that Israel, knowing what he knows coming from that first fight, has improved in some way, shape, or form after this Jan fight. And you can never say that someone's going to improve drastically after one fight. But what you're hoping is that rather than sitting in a gym kickboxing, that he's probably dedicating a little bit more time to defensive grappling and techniques where he's going to be able to stay off the cage. And if he does get to the ground, how effective is he going to be about getting up?
I think he had to have spent most of this camp addressing some of that, right?
You would hope.
The other part I do think is the size difference will come into play a little bit there, where it's going to be a little bit easier for Izzy to defend some of those takedown attempts because he's not dealing with a guy who's in the cage at 220 pounds.
No, but let's also be realistic that Stylebender hasn't fought anyone whose really main focus is grappling, right? You could take Calvin Gastelum as a grappler.
Derek Brunson would have been the other name that I would present.
That did not go well.
Derek Brunson didn't really try to grapple him.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll take that with a grain of salt.
Whitaker's a great blend of all of them, but again, none of these guys truly. You skip over Yoel Romero, a great fucking grappler.
But
none of these guys chose to
grapple.
But that's where I look at the way Jan beat him and the way that Vettori looks at their previous fight and says to himself, like, the way to get to this guy is I just need to go in there and I need to strike with him, because to get to the grappling transitions, I need to strike with him. But by round 3, 4, 5, Izzy was not trying to get up.
Yeah.
He had kind of accepted defeat against Jan.
Yeah, and that's my concern.
Yeah.
That's why I say, does he have a point to prove? Because if Marvin goes into this fight and wants to make it a dirty fight where he's constantly in his face, putting pressure on him, has him up against the cage, what has Israel done to develop a game plan that's going to get him out of those holes? We talked about so he has the game plan. I think everyone goes into the fights with a game plan.
Yeah.
Those game plans change once you get in there. Does he have the skill set? He showed it against Kevin Holland. He can hold a guy down. He can put some pressure on you and really beat you up and neutralize your game. But Kevin Holland isn't Israel Adesanya.
No.
Right? Is he going to be able to withstand the onslaught that Israel can deliver to him and be able to stick to the game plan, which is very tough for anybody?
This is an important question that Izzy's going to have to answer, because I think for you to pick Izzy, it means that you still think that he's that special talent that he clearly had that got him the opportunity to fight for 2 belts.
Yeah.
If you truly believe that wasn't that run can continue and that was just a blip in the radar, and then he this is going to be really important, because if he comes out and wins this in spectacular fashion, in some type of dominant fashion, this continues his ascension, because there's still levels he can grow.
There's still,
in MMA, we say this all the time, but it's a different sport. You're allowed to lose in MMA.
Yep.
Nate Diaz is a superstar.
It's almost
has 15 losses on his,
Yeah.
Because your ability to come back from them is sometimes just as important. Now, if Izzy comes out and has a stinker and wins by some type of boring decision, a la like Yoel or something like that, that could be detrimental as well. But as far as predictions go, I'm going to lean towards Izzy being special and being that type of talent that we don't always see. He's recently done some breakdowns on YouTube. If you haven't had a chance, go and check out his breakdowns. He did one on Robert Whitaker this past week.
He broke down his own fight?
He breaks down his own fight, which is, it's really interesting to
get that perspective.
In years, he fought Whitaker now, what was it, 2019, so almost 2 years ago, over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
To get that perspective and him picking up on little things, and you're hearing what he's kind of thinking in his head in the moment of it happening. So yeah, really interesting. And I think a person that does that kind of thing, that does live in their own film, is probably living in this Vettori film, is probably living in Vettori's film.
Yes.
So I'm going to lean
very cerebral
towards him being special, him getting the job done here. Vettori is a good, durable fighter, and it's a good test to come off of a loss to, but it's also a good opportunity to get a victory before moving on to some other people. So yeah, Izzy by finish is my pick.
He's got a point to prove. The word that you just kept throwing around that scares me every time you say it, because of something else that you often say, was you mentioned the word run a lot. Is this a run? Is this going to put him on a run? And you've often said that MMA is a world and a universe where you're judged based on your runs, and some people only get one.
He had a pretty fucking long one.
He had a long one, and we'd like to believe that Izzy is extremely special. I'm going to ride that train with you, and you're hoping that him moving up in weight for the first time and fighting a guy whose style did not necessarily mesh with his style.
Wasn't conducive to it at all.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm riding on that train with you. I am also saying Izzy gets the win, but I think that this might be a difficult one for Izzy, and I think he's taking this in a 5-round decision.
Rightfully so, man.
He may show glimpses where he's dominating, but I think that this is one of those burners where he's going to have to really get in there and prove himself.
It's pretty impressive, at least for my thought. If you're listening to me, you're going to be going into this being like, you're going to have high expectations. I just predicted 3 finishes in your last 3 fights,
which isn't that crazy though.
It could very well happen, and again, I hope Nate Diaz gets the job done. But yeah, 3. This is a huge fucking card. There is some good stuff on the prelims. Joanna Calderwood. I was going to call it Joanna.
Pretty sure it's Joanne Calderwood, isn't it?
What the fuck am I doing?
What's wrong with you, dude?
Yeah. So we've got her, Drew Dober, the most underrated fighter in the UFC.
according to Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. So
Chase Hooper is also on there.
Yes, baby Ben Askren.
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing
trying to prop back up the family name. Hopefully.
If he can come back from the brink again. He's done it a few times already. So, should be interesting.
I'm really, really excited for this weekend. I know Matt's really excited. Let us know if you're excited by dropping a couple predictions down in the comments for us. You can also hit the share.
There's really only one way that you can keep on kicking it with us.
How can you?
You got to hit the subscribe button.
Yeah, they can subscribe.
Yeah, you hit the subscribe button.
There's a red button. It says subscribe. There's a bell that gets you notifications. Please join us again. We would love to have you. You're welcome anytime. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you have Good Taste Live.
For Twitter, at
Good Taste Live.
At For Those with Good Taste on Instagram. Not the first thing that I did.
Yeah. We were there though. At For Those with Good Taste. It's a little wordy, we know, but you'll find it. It's pretty unique.
It really is the home for anybody who has good taste. So if you consider yourself a person with good taste, there's only one place that you can check out each and every week, and that's our channel at For Those with Good Taste. And we'll catch you guys
on the flip
right back here next week. Go Mets.
DeGrom's pretty fucking sick. Peace out. Love you.
For those with good taste.